Hello and welcome to Behind the Blue Curtain, the Sarasota Opera podcast. I'm your host, Hallie Geyh, Digital Marketing Manager at Sarasota Opera. I come to this season with a deep love of live performance and a genuine curiosity about opera. My background includes years of work in the arts and opera marketing, from my time at the IU Jacobs School of Music to my role here at Sarasota Opera, where I help share the stories that happen both on and off the stage. While I grew up immersed in music and live theater, this podcast is actually shaped less by expertise and more by curiosity, asking questions and learning from our guests. In today's episode, I'm joined by Richard Russell, who is stepping into a new chapter at Sarasota Opera as both artistic and general director. Richard's history with this company spans decades, from his early days as a young artist to his leadership roles behind the scenes, and that depth of experience brings a unique and deeply informed perspective to the season ahead. This conversation looks at the 2026-27 season in full, from fall through winter, but it's also about something deeper. It's about stewarding a legacy and honoring what has come before, and thoughtfully shaping what comes next. We talk about the artistic vision behind this season, the balance between tradition and variety, and the emotional power of live opera as a shared experience. Whether you're a longtime Sarasota Opera patron or someone curious about attending for the first time, this episode offers a meaningful look at where the company is headed. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Richard Russell. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Hallie.
So for listeners who may not know you or may be new to Sarasota Opera, could you share just a little bit about your background and how your path brought you here to the new dual role of artistic and general director?
So my history with Sarasota Opera goes back quite a long ways, actually. It goes back to 1989 when I came to the company as an apprentice artist. And over the next few seasons, I sang here in different roles. I was an apprentice artist, a studio artist, and then later a principal artist. And so developed a very close connection with this company. I took a kind of side trip into banking for 12 years. I worked for Citigroup for 12 years. But even during that time, while I was working in banking, I would continue to come down to Sarasota Opera and see the operas and kept a close connection with the company. Maestro Dorenzi and Greg Truppiano, our former artistic administrator, were close friends. I would come and visit them, see the shows. So there's actually very few of the productions that Sarasota Opera has done over the last 40 years that I haven't seen. I missed a couple of seasons if I got sick or something. But when I was looking to make a possible career change around 2005, my first thought was, and with encouragement both from Greg Truppiano and Maestro Dorenzi, of getting into arts administration. So I came to Sarasota Opera on my usual yearly visit, sat down with the then executive director, Susan Danis, and asked her opinion and asked her advice. And the upshot of that was I was hired as the marketing director. So I came to Sarasota Opera in 2005 as a marketing director. And I did that for 5 years, but my goal was always to run a company at some point. So in 2010, that opportunity came to me, a company that unfortunately no longer exists, but was in Princeton, New Jersey, called Opera New Jersey. Mm-hmm. It was a summer opera festival, and I was hired as the general director. But in this particular situation, it was doing both roles, general and artistic director. It was just called general director. So I was in charge of both the administrative and the artistic product. Now, it was a smaller company. We did 3 operas in a summer festival and then 1 opera in the winter in February. And it was a great experience for me learning. It was a wonderful company. I actually invited Maestro Dorenzi and many of the people who were used to seeing at Sarasota Opera to come and do a production with me up in New Jersey. When the opportunity came to come back to Sarasota in 2012, when the executive director, Susan Danis, stepped down and moved to Florida Grand Opera, I was offered the opportunity to come back as the executive director. And over the last 14 years, Maestro Dorenzi and I really formed a very close partnership. He was very generous in soliciting my opinion about the artistic product, about singers. I would go to all auditions. I would participate in rehearsals. So it really was with the idea that at the time that Maestro Dorenzi decided to step down, that I would take over the artistic leadership of the company when that happened.
Mm-hmm. not only have you come up through Sarasota Opera, so you have that perspective of the artist, and you've been in the artist's shoes, but then you've also had other roles within the company administratively. So you have perspectives that a lot of people might not have.
No, I think that's true. I really have such a deep, first of all, affection for this company and protection of this company. I feel very protective of what this company is and maintaining what Maestro Dorenzi built here. Mm-hmm. So I do know, I've worked on the administrative side. I was here in 2007 when we renovated this opera house, and I was marketing director at that time. While I didn't do fundraising, I was part of the team that talked about the messaging, the PR, and all of that. And I learned a lot from my predecessor, Susan Danis, about that process. But also the artistic side of this company. I've seen what's happened in this company for, since 1989. So it really is a part of my soul, this company.
You have some institutional knowledge that rarely comes around. I'm always wondering about different things that have happened along the way, and you would be the person to reach out to because you were there or knew someone who was there.
Maestro Dorenzi and I, and of course Stephanie Sandin and their daughter Francesca Macbeth, who works with our company, we have that institutional knowledge about how this company ran over this period of time. And we do have memory of the people who were involved, including memory of a lot of the donors and patrons, and, of course, of the artists and the productions.
And there's something very important about people who have institutional knowledge and not just computers, because you have the connection that you made with the different people along the way, which I think is really interesting when I'm asking you questions about what this opera was like when it was being put on and things of that nature.
Although I have to tell you, I'm still learning. As we're going through this process of revisiting the history of this opera house. And I've been doing, along with Martha Collins, been doing some research about the history of the theater and the company and all of that. There have been things that I didn't know that I've just discovered. So, life is always a learning process. And even today, I'm still learning more about this company.
Which is really cool and actually brings me to my next question. What was the very first opera you ever experienced live?
It was Carmen. I had a wonderful fifth grade teacher, a music teacher. And I grew up just outside of New York City. So this fifth grade teacher really loved opera. She was a subscriber to the Metropolitan Opera, and she introduced us to the opera Carmen, and I was fascinated by it. At the same time, I was a performer. I was doing, granted, I was in fifth grade, so I wasn't, but I was doing plays and things like that. I was very interested in music and theater. My mother had been a musician. I really felt a connection with Carmen and with the opera world. And I had the opportunity in that year, in the fifth grade, to go visit the Metropolitan Opera House, to do a backstage tour, to see Lincoln Center, and it all fascinated me. And I'd already had a love for theater and music and all of that, so I just dove into it. And within a couple of years, I convinced my parents, or my mother in particular, to go to an opera. And we got tickets for Carmen at New York City Opera, and that was my first experience.
The first live opera that I saw was actually at the Jacobs School of Music in third grade. And I remember going with my mother, and I remember the feeling of it more than I remember what was happening on stage. I remember the music, and I remember being struck by how enormous everything felt when I was that age. Once you're around 10 years old, you can remember things a little bit more. Do you remember any of the details of it? Is there a feeling that you got from it?
I have a very specific memory of it, is that I got a recording of the opera Carmen from our local library. Mm-hmm. And that was back in the LP era. Mm-hmm. And I would listen to it, and I would learn the music, and I'd learn the story. And I remember going into the theater and hearing that same music that I had heard on a recording, but live. And all of a sudden, it became alive for me in an incredible way. It was like all of a sudden I'm sitting in the room with these musicians who are making this sound. It was a richer sound than I probably had a cheap record player at that time, so I didn't have a really great hi-fi system or anything. But it was all of just being immersed in the same room as these musicians and singers and all of that. I just have this incredible recollection of when they started the overture and how excited I got with that sound.
Oh, I still get excited at a good overture every single time. So what part of the process do you personally look forward to the most each season when you come in? And actually now, since things are maybe changing a little bit for you with your position.
Well, honestly, not a lot is going to change. The process of putting together the production and the first rehearsal is always exciting. Mm-hmm. We have a great tradition, which I plan on continuing at Sarasota Opera, of the first rehearsal of the first opera of the winter season, doing a complete run-through with everybody, the chorus and everybody in the room. And there's a special excitement of that and the sense of where that's going to go and where that process is going to lead us. Mm. So that's something special to me. Also, the onstage rehearsals, in the room, seeing how things evolve, mm-hmm. and hopefully having some input in helping that evolve. I think that's very important. Mm-hmm. And then when the audience is there for the first time, the opening nights. I know a lot of people tell me, a lot of our subscribers and patrons say they don't like to go to opening nights because it's not, it may get better during the course of the run, and that may be true, and that does true. The performances develop, but there's a special excitement about the opening night. There's a special excitement about these singers going in front of the full house for the first time and presenting what they have to offer, giving without having our audience without having any preconception of, they haven't read a review, they may know what the opera's about, but not experiencing these singers for the first time.
Very fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh, and I think that's really exciting.
Even just the way you described it sounds very exciting. So you spend a lot of your time at the Opera House. I can vouch for that because I see you at every single performance I'm at, and I'm not at every single performance. Other people see you at every performance. We see you you're everywhere. So that leads me to ask, when you aren't here and when you aren't at the Opera House, what do you do to maybe recharge when you aren't doing opera stuff?
There is not a lot of time that I'm not doing opera stuff. I do like to read. Mm-hmm. I don't watch TV as much as I used to, so that's not really part of my process. I love some amount of physical activity, so I like to jog, for example. So it's hard during season because my best time to jog is the morning, and of course our lives are so night focused that it's hard to make that happen all the time. But I do love to be outside. I love nature. I love going to our local arts organizations, especially the theaters and the symphony and chamber music and things like that. I'm very open in terms of the kinds of music I enjoy going to. So, for example, when we do auditions in New York, sometimes I will be found at a jazz club that evening rather than the opera. Now, we tend to do auditions when the Met isn't running, so I need to find some other thing to do. But I'll go to a play, I'll go to a musical, or I'll go to a jazz club to listen to jazz.
So jazz.
I do like jazz, and I like the theater.
So it seems like this is almost just an extension of the things that you just really love, which is why you are here so much.
Well, yes, I love it a lot. And get me wrong. Opera is my first love. It will always be my first love. The type of singing that opera singers have to do is so visceral and so exciting to me. And also I love this company, and I think it's important for me as the CEO, either in my previous role or now this combined role, to be around the performance, to be around for our audience. One of my favorite things is to be on the street after the performance as people are coming out of the theater and seeing the reaction. And I really love that.
Let's look forward to the 2026-27 season, if you don't mind. We're going to go through each of the upcoming productions, but first I would be curious to see, where in this lineup do you see your artistic vision most clearly reflected, and how does it strike you, the balance between honoring Sarasota Opera's history and moving the company forward within the vision that you see for it?
Well, let me be clear about something, because I think that's the one thing I've gotten a lot of questions from our patrons about, is that with Maestro had a very specific aesthetic of traditional productions and honoring the intentions of the composers and librettists. And something that he and I share is a belief in these works and a belief that they do not require a radical reinterpretation to make them relevant for today. I have to say, I've heard people say this too many times, that, oh, young people today won't understand La Boheme unless you put it into contemporary clothing, or if you update it to today. And I just don't believe that's true. And I think I'm a data person. I think there's plenty of data to show that people like the traditional productions, that people relate to them. And I think, and as far as the whole updating thing, look at things like Downton Abbey or Bridgerton or all of these things. These are, that's the same thing.
Exactly.
People can understand and actually relish in being part of a time period that's not theirs. They like to fantasize about being, in the Belle Epoque in France, or being, in Italy, or being in the Renaissance era. I think people enjoy that. The really important thing about opera is to tell the story. And to tell the story in a direct and engaging way so that the audience can be part of the story and understand it and sympathize and get it. I think directors can be creative in this traditional framework. I still believe in that, and I think that's right for Sarasota Opera, and I think that's right for this community. I mean, I really do, and our market. And that's something that was not going to change about this company. The other thing that I feel really strongly about, and again, this is one of the great strengths of what Maestro Terenzi created here, is the musical element of Sarasota Opera. And the wonderful approach to singing, our wonderful orchestra, the amount of rehearsals we give them all, that's something that I feel is important. And that's not going to change, because he and I like a lot of the same singers. We have the same approach to singing. He taught me for a while when I was studying singing, actually. Maestro had a very specific specialty, and that was Italian opera, particularly Verdi. And without him at the helm, I just don't think the company can have that same focus. I still want to do Verdi. I think Verdi, you can't have a great opera company without doing Verdi. And I think, even in this next season, there's Verdi in that season. I think it's important. And it will be part of the company. And Italian opera will be part of the company. I do think that in this day and age, our audiences are looking for a little bit of diversity. I am expanding a little bit. Not a lot. I don't feel like Sarasota Opera, at least in the context of our main stage, is ready for a healthy dose of new music, for example. Although I would like to incorporate some of it into some of the activities we do, because I believe in new work. But I don't see that. I don't see that becoming a major focus of this company. I think it's presenting great opera in a visually compelling and engaging way, I think, is important. So next season's repertoire reflects a lot of what we've done before. All but one of the operas have been done by Sarasota Opera before. I still plan on doing the great works, still plan on doing Bohème and Carmen and Madame Butterfly and all of those things, but hopefully with a little less frequency. The big thing that we need to discuss as far as Maestro's absence is that, of course, Maestro Terenzi conducted 3 of the productions in each of our seasons, 1 in the fall and 2 in the winter, and that was the biggest thing that I was going to need to replace. So there are a number of conductors who have worked with us over the years that I wanted to bring back and who understand the aesthetic and the approach that this company takes, and which is why I wanted them to be part of this season. I do hope in the future we'll bring in some new conductors, but these are talented people who've worked with us and really understand the company, so that was one of the reasons why I asked them to conduct. So like Anthony Barrese in the fall, who started as Maestro's assistant years ago, Marcello Cormillo, who is also another one of Maestro's assistants, who is now forging a career. He's doing this summer, he's doing The Marriage of Figaro at Central City Opera. He conducts an orchestra in Kentucky, so Marcello has conducted a number of operas for us, including The Barber of Seville and Don Giovanni, and I'm really thrilled that he will be conducting La Traviata.
How do we want to do this? Do we want to go through first, list off the season, and then go into each piece?
Well, let's talk for a second about the fall.
Okay.
Because, first of all, the format of the season is exactly as we've done it for the last number of years. Hansel and Gretel, which we're doing as the main production of that season. It's a fairy tale, obviously. It's the Grimm Brothers fairy tale, told in a very direct manner, very accessible. But the music is very sophisticated. And I think people forget that. They think of Hansel and Gretel, oh, it's a kid's show. It's not a kid's show. It is an adult opera. The composer, Engelbert Humperdinck, who is not the pop singer, but a German composer, he was a disciple of Richard Wagner. So he lent into Wagner's penchant for rich orchestration and musically sophisticated settings. There are definitely folk music elements of it. There are very accessible melodies and a very accessible story, but it takes, honestly, a big orchestra and really good singers to make this work. So we are doing that this fall, and it's our hope that our regular audience will enjoy it and want to come. I know I've spoken to some of our audience who have great memories of being brought to Hansel and Gretel by their parents, and I hope some of our parents will have the same thought in bringing their families to see Hansel and Gretel.
Is there anything else about this specific production that will be sort of distinctive, maybe the casting or visually, that you could give a peek into for our audience? Well,
I've invited a director. It's actually a production that has already been mounted at other opera companies. So this won't be unique to Sarasota Opera, although it will be adapted for us. It was first produced, co-directed for New Orleans Opera by a director named Lauren Meeker and Felicity Stuyvesant, who's a director and choreographer. Lauren, unfortunately, can't be with us, but Felicity is coming to lead it here with an associate director, Nora Winslow. And they are going to recreate that production, but with elements that are unique to Sarasota Opera. Our costumes are by Howard Kaplan. The set is the set that they used in New Orleans, but it happens to have been designed by Stephen Kemp, who has done a lot of design work for us. So we're in the process of talking over the concept and making it work for Sarasota Opera. And I'm just delighted to bring some new directors to us here in Sarasota Opera. But again, the approach is going to be very traditional. It's our traditional costumes. We have some wonderful singers who are going to be part. We have some new singers who are going to be with us. Kerrigan Bigelow is going to be Gretel. Cara Morgan, who was a studio artist with us back in 2021, I think Cara was with us, is going to be Hansel. Lindsay Polson, who was a studio artist with us last season, will be the mother. We have a new baritone, Spencer Reichman, who's going to be making his debut as the father, and a great favorite of ours at Sarasota Opera, Lisa Chavez, who was Azucena, will be the witch.
Wonderful.
And it will be conducted by Anthony Barese, who conducted Our Merry Widow this season.
Well, that's excellent. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So the next in that season, we have Rutabaga Country. Could you give us a little bit of background on that?
Well, it's a Sarasota Youth Opera production. And it was actually a work that was commissioned by Sarasota Opera in 2018. We did the premiere of it. It's by a composer named Rachel J. Peters, and it is a really charming story. It's based on the stories of Carl Sandburg, and it tells the story of a father who has his children with him, and they are revisiting places that their mother, who has passed away, loved. And it's really just a lovely fable, wonderful story, and really charming music. And I'm really looking forward to revisiting this opera. Martha Collins, our director of education, will be directing it. Jesse Marchins, who is our youth opera music director, will be conducting. And it's going to be fun, and it's a great fun for the kids. The young people who are part of the production really enjoyed that back when we did it in 2018, and I know they're going to enjoy it again.
How does the youth opera fit into your broader artistic vision for Sarasota Opera?
That is something that I am so proud of, and if anything, I would like to expand it if we can. We were in the process of doing that when COVID hit. We were trying to create some satellite programs outside of the Opera House, but COVID hit, and that totally decimated that initiative. So we're hoping to be able to expand it. But the Sarasota Youth Opera is, again, one of Maestro's creations, 41 years now, I think. And it is such an important part of this company, and I'm so firmly committed to maintaining it and helping it grow if we can.
Wonderful. Now that we've spoken about the 2 productions that will be in the fall season, let's move on to the winter 2027 season, which begins with La Traviata.
So the winter season, which is our big festival season and we have a lot of visitors and all that, I wanted to maintain a lot of the core of what we do at Sarasota Opera, introduce one new thing, but also I think really do a little bit of diversity in repertoire. And so La Traviata is one of the most popular of Verdi's operas, and one that we have actually not done as part of our winter season since 1998. I think it's a wonderful piece. It's one of my favorite of Verdi's operas. It's so emotional. I asked Stephen Kemp, who is the set designer who we've been working with pretty frequently in the last couple of years, to design the set. Marco Nistico, our great friend, who sang Germain, the father, the last time we did it in the fall, which was in 2017, will be directing it.
So it sounds like those are some pretty exciting things for La Traviata.
I think so. And we, of course, the singers, wonderful Virginia Mims, who has been with us first as an apprentice, then a studio, is really developing as a wonderful singer. She was Susanna in The Marriage of Figaro. She was Musetta in Our La Bohème. She comes from a line of Violettas because her mother was a singer who I knew years and years ago at Indiana University, Jacob School, before it was the Jacob School actually, but it was the Jacob School, and who had a wonderful career, and Violetta was one of her most important roles. And of course she studied with Virginia Zeani, who was probably the person in the history of Violettas that sang it the most. She sang it over 600 times. So there's a great pedigree there for Virginia, also something to live up to, but I know Virginia is incredibly capable, a wonderful artist, and she'll do it. Luke Norville, who was our Ferrando in Così fan tutte, is doing Alfredo, and I after I made that decision to hire Luke to do it, Canadian Opera Company hired him to do the same role. So he'll be doing it in Toronto, I think, before we do it. So, all
right. So changing the vibe a little bit, we're moving on to HMS Pinafore, correct?
So this is the big change. I am a big fan of Gilbert and Sullivan. I love Gilbert. I've done it. Actually, I did HMS Pinafore when I was in Bloomington at Indiana University. So it is a piece that I have great affection for. I mounted it when I did it in New Jersey, when I was in New Jersey, and it was very successful, very entertaining. I feel like, it is that kind of bridge between, it's a light opera. Some people call it, Gilbert and Sullivan called it a light opera. Some people call it operetta, and some people think it's a little too close to a musical, but I think it is, I think Sullivan was a very good composer. I think it really works on stage. I think it's charming. It's funny. And I really felt like it was something that would be a little different for our audience, but that our audience would enjoy. I can't tell you how many people since we announced the season have told me, I was part of a Gilbert and Sullivan Society. I'm looking forward to that. So I hope people will enjoy this.
I know I will. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite light operas. Yes. I like to think of it as an opera because I felt very sophisticated as a child, really enjoying HMS Pinafore. I think it's a really great way to get younger and newer people, maybe not even younger, but people who haven't been to the opera before through the doors. They've heard some of it. They don't know they've heard some of it.
I think that's true. I also think, when I was growing up going to opera, so after, we talked about my first opera experience at New York City Opera, I continued to go. I subscribed to New York City Opera when I was in high school with my mother. We would go on Saturday afternoons. And in those days, Gilbert and Sullivan was a part of their repertoire. I saw HMS Pinafore, Pirates of Penzance, Mikado, all at New York City Opera. So a lot of opera companies included Gilbert and Sullivan in their repertoire. So I don't feel it's that far off.
No, absolutely not.
I think it's going to be delightful. Mark Fryman, who has directed a number of pieces for us over the years, will be directing it. It will be conducted by John Spencer IV, who is another one of Maestro Dorenzi's assistants who has gone on to a career. He's been working in Germany for the last few years and is coming back to us after a bit of a hiatus. So I'm happy to have John back. And our beloved. So the only word I can think of saying, referring to Hannah Bramer, who will be playing Josephine. Hannah is so adept. She's such an incredible singer and actress. She was so heartbreaking as Susanna this year.
Tell me about it.
It really was such a moving performance. And she's really funny, too. She did the Haydn opera we did a few years ago, L'Infideltà delusa, and she was hysterical. She was so funny. So I know she will bring that special charm. And, of course, Jake Stamatis will be playing her father.
Another wonderful person.
Yeah, Jake Stamatis will be playing her father.
And then next we have Ariadne of Naxos, who, and I believe Martha will be directing that, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, and Jesse Martins will be conducting it.
What a team.
I love Ariadne of Naxos. It is one of the 4 most popular of Richard Strauss's works, and I think it's incredibly accessible. It's a light work, even though there are some serious sections of it, but it's serious not in a terribly dramatic way, but in a just this contrast between the great thing about Ariadne of Naxos, it's a contrast between a serious opera and a comic opera, and that's the whole story of it. It is a funny tale, I think, of a composer who has written a new opera, and he's been hired by the richest man in Vienna to produce this opera for a dinner party. And at the same time, after the opera goes on, a Commedia dell'arte troupe of comedians are supposed to perform. But time is running out. The richest man in Vienna has scheduled a great big fireworks display.
As you do.
As one does. And because they're running short of time, he decides and the fireworks display has to start at 9:00. So he decides that the opera and the comedians have to perform at the same time rather than one after another. So they have to figure out how to do that. So the first part of the prologue of this work, and which we will be doing in English, which was a tradition in this country when the opera was first introduced. Over the Metropolitan Opera did it, New York City Opera did it, and I think because of the way the dialogue work, it makes sense to do it in English. So we'll be doing that in English, but the opera we will be doing in German.
Okay.
And so the prologue is the composer and the comedians and how are they going to make this all work, and then the opera itself is the product. And how you have the seriousness of Ariadne, who's been abandoned by her lover onto this island of Naxos and is saved by Bacchus, the god of wine. And this is all tragedy and sadness. And then the comedians dancing through this and making fun of her. And it's really a charming work. And I think I really am looking forward to it.
It sounds like the juxtaposition between the two productions going on simultaneously really does bring out more of the laughter, more of the kind of ridiculousness of this entire situation.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. There's this Commedia dell'arte troupe which is headed by a character called Zerbinetta, who is one of the tour de force coloratura roles in the repertoire, and she has this rather long aria in the opera, which goes up to the highest of high notes, and it's really an incredible showpiece, and it's great fun to listen to, and so I think it is a great contrast to the seriousness of Ariadne, this mythic, creature who's been left on this island, and her hero, the savior, who comes to get her. So it's really quite fun, and I think people are going to enjoy it.
We end the season on a piece that I haven't seen before, Jennifer. Yes,
Jennifer is a piece by the composer Leos Janáček. It's certainly heard with more frequency than it was in the last 2 decades. It's being produced more and more. I think as people are discovering Czech opera, there was for years a limited repertoire, or they would do it in translation. But more and more over the last, I would say 25, 30 years, you're seeing more Czech works become part of the repertoire. And Jennifer is really the great dramatic piece in this repertoire, and it wasn't Janáček's first opera, but it was an early opera for him, and it was this great big success for him. It was performed in the 1920s, I think it was the 20s, the Metropolitan Opera in German. It was performed all over Germany in German, and then recently it's become more in the repertoire of international opera companies in Czech, which is what we're doing. We did it in 1998. Actually, coincidentally, the same year we did Traviata. Maestro Dorenzi conducted it. And it is a piece I really find incredibly moving and powerful. It is not light. It is a heavy and very dramatic piece. But really what spurred my desire to do it is that we had the opportunity to have one of the singers I most admire, one of the great dramatic sopranos of the last, 25 years, able to come and perform the role of Kostanička, who is the stepmother of Jennifer. She had done Jennifer earlier in his career. I saw her do Jennifer at the Metropolitan Opera. And then as her career progressed and her voice, she became a little bit older, her voice got a little more dramatic, she took on the role of Kostanička, which is an incredible dramatic role. And so we had the opportunity to have Karita Matila, who is, again, one of the great singers, to do one of her greatest roles. She and I have had some correspondence over the last couple of years, and she mentioned that she lives in Naples, and Naples, Florida, and she wanted to work more in the States. And I said, would you consider coming and working with our company? And she said she would like to. So that was really the impetus for me doing this piece. And I'm so thrilled that we've put together what I think is going to be a really powerful and wonderful production. We will have a soprano named Catherine Henry, who was understudying this role at the Lyric Opera of Chicago a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I think. Lisa Davidson was singing the role and ended up having to go on. And so many people told me how wonderful her performance was. I had heard her sing a few times, so I'm really delighted that she's able to do the role of Jennifer. We have Victor Starsky, who is our Manrico in Il Trovatore. He's going to do Steva, who is Jennifer's lover, but ultimately abandons her. And then Christopher Oglesby, who was our Edgardo in Lucia di Lammermoor, and also was Pinkerton in Madame Butterfly. A wonderful singer, really good actor. He has not been with us, was not with us last year or the year before. He's back playing Lazza, who is the man who is in love with Jennifer and ultimately marries her. So it's an incredibly powerful, it's a dark piece. I have Catherine Carter, who directed our Merry Widow, very different piece. Yes. She's directing this. Stephen Kemp is designing the set again for us. And wonderful to have a conductor back with us, David Neely. David is conducting this piece. David has done this work before. He is also the music director of the Des Moines Metro Opera, and he's done this work there. But David has conducted a number of pieces with us over the years, but actually hasn't been here for 10 years. He has done pieces like Of Mice and Men for us, Tiefland, Vanessa, and actually his first opera he did was Die Fledermaus. So David is also somebody I know from the Jacob School. He and I went to Indiana University together at the same time. So wonderful conductor, and I'm just delighted he's coming back to lead this production. I really think it's going to be something special.
Something really exciting about this season. There's escapism, and then there's also catharsis.
That was one of the things with the season that I really wanted to try to achieve. I feel like opera has such a capacity for really tugging at your emotions in so many different ways. And having something, a romantic, beautiful tragedy like La Traviata with something very light and really kind of over-the-top funny in HMS Pinafore, something a little bit more subtle with Ariadne auf Naxos, and then a piece that just, is so dramatic and really hits you hard with Jennifer.
I do have one last question for you. What do you hope audiences who have never seen an opera take away from this season?
Well, I think that opera can be many things. We actually have a variety and richness in the repertoire available to us in opera. that we have this traditional, very Italian kind of romantic thing, but also something that's funnier and you can enjoy, you can come away laughing. And we all need that from time to time. And things that maybe are thornier than some of the rich romantic Italian operas. There is, I think, something to give people a variety of experiences when they come to the opera. And I hope that that's what they come away with.
I think that they will. I've been thinking about this, toying with what opera is to me. I personally feel like it is human emotion personified.
No, I feel exactly the same way. And I've always said that, opera has the capacity for expressing the range of the human experience in a way that I think no other art form can. Because you have words, you have the music and the way that the music informs the words. And I'm not only talking about the singing, but also what the orchestra does. So you can have a sense of what's going on in a character's mind without them saying it, through what's being expressed in the orchestra. And the words are there, and the music is available to heighten the emotion of the words or make it funnier. To use, I think about the operas of Rossini, which we're not doing this season, but the operas of Rossini, he had an amazing capacity in his comic works of using onomatopoeia, of using the sound of words to create humor. Not just the actual meaning of the words, but also the sound of the way that words are articulated to create humor. And I think that, that's the same thing. I think Gilbert and Sullivan have that way with the patter songs that are part of Gilbert and Sullivan, this kind of very fast articulation of text, and that it adds to the humor. So the music really, it heightens the experience of the words, and then of course the orchestral portion and the part that happens without voice allows you to express something that words can't actually say.
It all comes together to create like a multifaceted and really delicious piece of work.
Right. I hope that people will join me on this journey. The core of what Sarasota Opera always has been, I hope I will be an appropriate steward for that. I really want to continue what our audience has come to trust about what Sarasota Opera is. While maybe there's a title or two that you won't expect in the opera seasons that come, I hope that the product, what you see on the stage, will be what our audience have come to expect from Sarasota Opera, and trust in that we will continue this tradition of great performances.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Thank you, Hallie.
I hope this conversation has inspired you to join us for the 2026-27 season and to experience these stories for yourself. This is just the beginning. Throughout this season of Behind the Blue Curtain, we'll be going beyond the stage and behind the scenes of Sarasota Opera. We'll be sitting down with singers, directors, conductors, designers, stage managers, educators, and artists from across the company to explore not only the productions you'll see this season, but also the people, the ideas, and the creative processes that bring them to life. Whether you're a lifelong opera lover or someone who is simply curious to learn more, I invite you to tune in as we discover together what happens behind the blue curtain. And as you decide which operas you want to see this season, and I recommend all of them, you can begin purchasing your tickets online on Saturday, August 1st, with in-person box office sales beginning Tuesday, September 1st. Whether you're planning a night out with friends, introducing someone to opera for the first time, or simply looking for an opportunity to experience live performance, there's truly something for everyone in this season's lineup. However you choose to attend, what matters most is showing up. So I want to thank you for listening. Hallie Geyh, tuning out. I'll see you at Sarasota Opera.